She burned the rice again, Chinedu's mother said loudly, making sure everyone at the table heard her. People laughed. Some shook their heads. Amara stood there quietly, forcing a small smile, even though her heart was breaking. The truth was that jollof rice wasn't even hers. It was her sister-in-law who made it. But no one cared. They had already decided that Amara was the problem. They pointed at her, mocked her cooking, and laughed at the way she spoke. One aunt even joked, "Maybe she thinks salt and sugar are the same." Amara felt her face burn with shame. She looked at her husband, Chinedu, hoping he would say something, anything, to defend her, but he just looked down at his plate and said nothing. That silence hurt even more than the insults. This wasn't the first time. Every time something went wrong with food, they blamed Amara. It didn't matter if she cooked or not. In their eyes, she was always wrong, always not good enough. "She's not our type," his mother had said more than once. They made her feel like a stranger in her own home. But that day, something changed in Amara. As they laughed and whispered, she stayed quiet. But inside, she understood something very clearly. This wasn't just teasing. It wasn't just about food. It was deeper. They didn't want her to fit in. They didn't want her to belong. This wasn't a kitchen mistake. It was a message, a way to make her feel small. Amara didn't cry. She didn't run out of the room. She just stood there and smiled a little, as if nothing had touched her. But inside, she made a decision. She wouldn't try to win their love anymore. She would show them her worth, not through arguments, but through action. This was no longer about rice or stew. This was a quiet war, and she was ready to fight it, with grace, with strength, and with something they would never see coming. Every time Amara went to visit her in-laws, she felt like she was walking into a comedy show, but she was always the joke. It didn't matter what she said or did. Someone had something cruel to say. If she brought food, they would roll their eyes and whisper, "Let's hope she didn't cook this one." One uncle once laughed loudly and asked, "Did you learn to cook from YouTube?" Another aunt smirked and said, "You should just stick to boiling water, dear. That's safer." Even when Amara put her heart into preparing meals with love and care, they still found something wrong. One day, someone complained of a stomachache, and they all quickly blamed her food, even though 3 other people had cooked that day too. No one cared about the truth. They had already chosen her as their target, and every little thing became a reason to insult her. At first, she tried to smile through the pain. She kept hoping things would change, that maybe if she showed more love or worked harder, they would finally accept her. But instead, things only got worse. The jokes became louder. The looks became colder. The room would go quiet when she entered, only to burst into laughter behind her back. Eventually, Amara stopped trying. She stopped joining them at the dining table. She would serve everyone, then quietly take her plate to the guest room and eat alone. That silence in the room where she sat alone with her food felt heavier than all the insults. Her laughter, which once filled the house, disappeared. Her smile faded. The light in her eyes grew dim. She started to question herself. Maybe she really wasn't good enough. She turned to Chinedu for support, hoping her husband would defend her, stand by her, or at least say something. But he would just shake his head and say, "Just ignore them. That's how they are." His words felt like knives. Amara wasn't asking for a war. She just wanted to feel safe, to feel seen, to feel like she mattered. But Chinedu's silence made her feel invisible. Being mocked by his family hurt, but his quietness hurt even more. Amara realized that in this house, she was not a daughter-in-law. She was just a name they laughed at, a shadow in the corner. And the one person who should have had her back was standing with them by saying nothing at all. One evening, Chinedu's family organized a big dinner. Important guests were coming, and everyone in the house was busy pretending to help. Just before things got started, Chinedu's aunt smiled sweetly and called Amara aside. "Come and help with the food," she said. Amara followed, thinking it was just normal support. But the moment they reached the kitchen, the aunt disappeared, leaving Amara alone with 7 different dishes to finish and serve. She was confused, but tried her best. She moved quickly, checking pots, arranging plates, making sure everything looked nice. But something didn't feel right. They had told her the guests would arrive at 7 p.m., so she worked at a calm pace. But suddenly, she heard voices, laughter, and footsteps. The guests were already there. They had lied about the time. By the time Amara rushed out with the food, It had gone cold. No one told her. No one helped. And now, everyone was looking at her like she had failed. Chinedu's mother stood up and shouted, "You've embarrassed us in front of our guests." The room burst into laughter. Some shook their heads. Others whispered. A few guests even chuckled, thinking it was part of the entertainment. Amara stood still, holding the tray in her hands. Her heart felt heavy. Her eyes stung, but she refused to let a single tear fall. She looked around and realized something. This wasn't an accident. This was planned. They set her up to fail, and now they were enjoying the show. She looked at Chinedu, hoping he would speak up, but once again, he said nothing. That silence was louder than the laughter. Amara didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She didn't beg. She slowly walked out of the dining room, her steps calm, her face blank. But something inside her had changed. A fire had started. A switch had flipped. She was done trying to fit into a family that only wanted to see her fall. She was done hoping for love from people who enjoyed her pain. That night, Amara didn't just walk away from the dinner. She walked into a new version of herself, stronger, wiser, and ready to show them that the woman they mocked was far more powerful than they ever imagined. After that painful dinner, Amara changed. She stopped trying to please Chinedu's family. She stopped waiting for their approval or kind words. She became quiet, not because she was weak, but because she was focused. Deep inside, she promised herself she would never let them make her feel small again. But she didn't shout. She didn't argue. Instead, she worked in silence. Every day, when no one was watching, Amara started learning. She signed up for online culinary classes using her little savings. She studied how to cook different traditional dishes from across Nigeria, from the spicy soups of the south to the rich meals of the east. She practiced daily, even when she was tired. She made mistakes, but she never gave up. Then one day, she created a secret cooking page on social media. She didn't use her real name. She used a nickname only she knew. She began sharing photos and short videos of her cooking. At first, only a few people noticed, but slowly, things changed. People started commenting, liking, and sharing. They loved her food. They loved her gentle voice, her simple style, and her delicious meals. Before she knew it, she had over 100,000 followers, then 200,000, then 300,000. Her page blew up. People started asking for private cooking lessons. Some even invited her to cater small parties. Amara was now making money doing what they once mocked her for, but she didn't tell anyone, not even Chinedu. She kept everything hidden. Every night, while they laughed in the living room, she edited her videos quietly in her room. She stayed calm and humble, but her confidence was growing again, little by little. Whenever she remembered how they laughed at her, she just smiled and whispered to herself, "Let them laugh. I'm preparing something they'll never forget." This was her quiet season of transformation, the time she chose to rise, not with anger, but with power and peace. Chinedu's parents were planning a big celebration for their 30th wedding anniversary. They wanted it to be grand, something the whole town would talk about. They made a long guest list, about 80 people, including family members, respected elders, community leaders, and even some local celebrities. Everyone in the family was excited. There were meetings, phone calls, decorations, and so much planning going on. One day, Amara calmly offered to help. She said she could host the party and even cater the food. She said it with a soft smile, but her words were met with laughter, loud, mocking laughter. Chinedu's mother looked at her with pity. "Oh no," she said, waving her hand. "We'll need real chefs for this kind of event." Someone else added, "This isn't your YouTube kitchen, dear." They didn't take her seriously. They thought she was joking. Amara just nodded and said nothing more. She didn't push. She didn't beg. She had learned to let people talk while she worked in silence. Deep inside, she knew something they didn't. The family went ahead and booked a fancy venue in town. It was expensive and beautiful, but just 2 weeks before the anniversary, something unexpected happened. The venue cancelled. There had been some emergency repairs, and the place couldn't host any event. Panic broke out in the family. There were calls, arguments, and stress. Every good place was already booked. Time was running out. That's when someone mentioned a newly renovated hall just outside town. It was beautiful, affordable, and still available. The family rushed to check it out. And when they got there, they were shocked. Amara was the owner. They stood at the entrance, frozen. The same Amara they had laughed at, owned the very place they now needed. The hall was elegant. The chairs, the lighting, the space, everything was perfect. The family had no choice. They had to rent it. And this time, they didn't laugh when Amara offered to cater the food again. They just nodded, quietly. Amara didn't rub it in. She didn't remind them of their past words. She simply smiled and began planning. She already knew what she was going to do. It wasn't about revenge. It was about showing them who she really was, with actions, not words. The anniversary day finally came, and the atmosphere was bright and full of excitement. The hall looked stunning, sparkling lights, lovely decorations, everything arranged beautifully. Guests began to arrive, dressed in their best clothes, smiling and greeting each other. The music playing in the background was soft and classy, setting the perfect mood. No one could believe how elegant the place looked. It was nothing like the Amara they once laughed at. Then came the moment that changed everything. The food was served. At first, people kept chatting, but the moment they took the first bite, the entire hall went silent. Forks paused mid-air, eyes widened. Then one guest said, "My God, what is this?" The flavors were deep, rich, unforgettable. The rice was perfectly cooked. The soups tasted like home and royalty at the same time. The meat was soft and full of spice, and every single plate was arranged like a picture. People who had mocked Amara before were now licking their fingers. The elders began to clap without being asked. Some guests stood up just to applaud. "Who made this food?" they asked. "Please, we need to meet the chef." Another man, a respected leader in the community, stood and shouted, "This is more than cooking. This is art. She's a national treasure." Then the lights dimmed slightly, and Amara stepped out slowly from the back. She wore a soft, flowing silk dress that shimmered under the lights. Her makeup was gentle but perfect, and her hair was tied neatly. She walked with quiet confidence, not proud, not loud, just peaceful and strong. The moment her in-laws saw her, their mouths opened in shock. They couldn't believe their eyes. This was not the same Amara they had once teased. This was a woman in full power. Whispers spread across the hall. People stared at her with respect, some even with guilt. Her mother-in-law lowered her eyes. Chinedu's aunt, who once made her cry, looked away, embarrassed. No one said a word to insult her now. Amara didn't smile out of pride. She smiled because she knew the truth had finally spoken for her. Through her hard work, her growth, and her talent. She didn't have to shout. She didn't have to prove anything anymore. Her food, her grace, and her quiet strength had done it all for her. Every dish Amara served that night wasn't just food. It was a message, carefully planned and full of meaning. She didn't just cook to impress. She cooked to speak without words. The bitter leaf soup came first. It was rich and flavorful, but underneath it carried a sharp bitterness. Just like the way her in-laws had treated her. As they sipped it, many winced slightly at the strong taste. They didn't know, but Amara had chosen it on purpose, as a symbol of the bitterness they had poured into her life. It was her quiet way of reminding them how their words and actions had hurt. Next came the yam pottage. It was warm, sweet, and comforting. People smiled as they ate it, and some even asked for second servings. That dish represented the peace and sweetness Amara had found by herself, away from their insults, away from their judgment. It was the taste of freedom, of healing, of joy she built alone when no one believed in her. But the biggest surprise was the dessert. A large, beautifully decorated cake was brought out at the end of the evening. It was covered in smooth white icing, topped with delicate flowers made of sugar. Everyone leaned forward, curious to read what was written on it. In bold, elegant letters, it said, "To the family who taught me more than any cookbook could." The entire hall went silent. At first, no one moved. The laughter from earlier had disappeared. The jokes had stopped. Suddenly, every dish made sense. The bitter soup, the sweet pottage, the cake. It wasn't just a meal. It was a story, her story. Chinedu's family stared at the cake, some of them with tears forming in their eyes. What they thought was a joke, what they thought was just food, turned into a deep lesson. The silence grew heavier as people began to realize what Amara had truly gone through and how she had risen above it all. Amara didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her message had been served, bite by bite. Every spoonful they took reminded them of the way they had treated her and how she turned pain into purpose. That night, the laughter turned into quiet reflection, and for the first time, her silence was louder than all their words put together. As the hall remained silent, Chinedu's father slowly stood up. His face was serious, but his eyes showed something deeper: shame, maybe even regret. Everyone turned to look at him, wondering what he would say. He cleared his throat and spoke quietly, but clearly. "We misjudged you," he said. The room froze. Chinedu's mother, who had always mocked Amara the most, was shaking. Her hands trembled as she stood beside her husband. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Forgive us. You didn't deserve that. All the things we said, we were wrong." All eyes turned to Amara, waiting for her to respond, but she didn't rush. She didn't smile or cry. She just stood there, calm and proud, as if she had waited her whole life for this moment, but no longer needed it. Even Chinedu looked different. He stared at her like he didn't recognize her anymore, not because she had changed her dress or her hair, but because he was finally seeing the strength he had ignored for so long. The woman who once sat quietly in a corner, hurt by their words, was now the one everyone respected, even admired. But Amara didn't reply to them. She didn't say, "I forgive you." She didn't say thank you. She didn't even nod. Instead, she looked at herself, the confident woman standing in front of them, not needing their approval anymore. That was her answer. She had once tried so hard to fit in, to please them, to be accepted, but not anymore. Now she knew her worth. She had built something by herself, turned pain into power, and became someone they could never forget. Chinedu looked like he wanted to say something, maybe to explain, maybe to apologize, but words failed him. He had watched his wife grow, but he hadn't grown with her. And now he was realizing he might have lost the best thing in his life, not because she left, but because he never truly stood by her. Amara wasn't looking for revenge. She wasn't angry anymore. She had something better: peace, success, and self-respect. And in that moment, the whole room understood. She didn't need them to say sorry. She had already moved on, and she had done it beautifully. After the anniversary party, word spread like wildfire. Everyone was talking about the food, the setup, the woman behind it all. Pictures of the dishes started going viral online. People were sharing them, reposting, tagging others. Food bloggers wrote about it. Influencers praised the creativity. Within days, Amara's secret cooking channel exploded with views. She crossed 1 million followers without even showing her full face. People from other countries started reaching out. Big clients from abroad sent messages asking her to cater their events, some even offering to fly her out. She was now not just a cook, she had become a brand. And suddenly, everything changed. The same family that once laughed at her, insulted her cooking, and made her feel small, now couldn't stop talking about her. Chinedu's parents, who once called her not their type, now proudly told anyone who would listen, "That's our daughter-in-law." They showed off her photos, talked about her food, and claimed they always knew she had talent. But Amara, she just smiled. She didn't correct them. She didn't remind them of the pain, the humiliation, the tears she cried alone. She didn't need to. Deep inside, she knew the truth. They weren't proud of her because they had changed. They were proud of her because the world had changed how it looked at her. But she no longer needed their approval. She had already passed that stage. Their respect, though loud now, came too late. To her, it was like adding salt to a dish she had already eaten and enjoyed. It didn't change anything. What they gave her now was not real honor. It was just a reaction to her success. But her strength, her value, her glow, that came from inside, from the quiet days no one saw, from the moments she kept moving when no one believed in her. Amara had already won long before they ever clapped. And so, she kept shining, building, cooking, living. Because real respect is not begged for or forced. It's earned, quietly, patiently. And when it finally comes late, it's no longer needed. That was Amara's story. She didn't just cook to feed, she cooked to rise. Amara never reminded anyone of the cruel words they once said to her. She didn't throw the past in their faces or seek pity. She didn't talk about the times they laughed at her, made fun of her food, or told her she wasn't good enough. She didn't have to. Her success had already said everything for her. Now, at every family gathering, the atmosphere had changed. The same people who once mocked her now watched her closely, careful not to say anything wrong. At one dinner, Someone asked if the soup needed more salt, but they didn't add it until Amara nodded. That's how much things had shifted. Her opinion was now the final word. But Amara didn't act proud or boastful. She stayed calm, polite, and graceful. She wasn't there to prove anything. She had already proven everything by the way she carried herself, by the life she had built, and by how far she had come. Her silence was powerful. Her success spoke louder than any insult they once threw at her. She had turned all that pain into power. And now, they didn't laugh. They listened. They didn't correct her. They waited for her guidance. But deep down, Amara wasn't holding on to anger. She wasn't bitter. She had simply grown. Her taste in food, in people, in life had improved. She had seen who was real and who wasn't. She had learned the hard way that sometimes the ones who hurt you the most are the ones sitting right at your table. And so, when she looked around the room and saw how careful they were with her, how much they now respected her, she didn't feel proud in a loud way. She felt quiet peace. Because this was not revenge. This was a reminder that you should never mock someone because of where they are now. You don't know what fire they're cooking their future in. Amara didn't need to clap back with words. Her life had already done that for her. If this story touched your heart, don't just scroll, like, share, and comment. Amara rose to inspire someone who's been doubted too long. Follow for more powerful stories that remind us your glow up is the best clapback.